Hi, my name is Stephanie. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, Leveraging Service Catalogs to Transform Service Delivery. Please note that you all are muted for the duration of this event, and you may submit questions using the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen, or it may be accessed from the toolbar along the top of the WebEx window. I'm going to turn it over now to Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen Systems. Don?
Thank you, Stephanie. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen, and with me today are Jack Schmidt, the IT Service and Process Manager at Argonne National Labs, and Jeff Benedict, who heads up Evergreen's ITSM practice. Jack has a strong background in ITIL and ISO 20000, and Jeff has a terrific development background as well. If you have any questions, as Stephanie said, please feel free to submit them via the Q&A panel at the bottom. So let's take a look at today's agenda. Excuse me. Before I do that, I'd like to have a special thanks out to those of you who have been consistent or persistent repeat attendees at our webinars. We began these series back in late August, early September, and have been running about twice a month roughly. And we've noticed that more or less half are repeat attendees. So I'm hoping that means that you have found value and continue to come to try to find value, because I will tell you that is our goal. We want to give you a lot of value in the webinar and give you things you can take away and use in your work today. So if we're not delivering that, please let us know and give us your thoughts and suggestions. Our goal today is to tell you a story and share the experiences and lessons learned along the way, as well as the Argonne roadmap and strategy going forward. Then we will demonstrate some of the functionality built for Argonne on the ServiceNow platform and wrap it up with open Q&A like we always do. So before we dive into it, my last slide is about Evergreen, and those of you who have been here before, you know this is a pretty quick one. Evergreen is a US-based consulting firm, and we work with hundreds of mid-market and Fortune 1000 companies to help them improve their IT service management execution. We're a full lifecycle firm, or in the words of one of our customers, you have both process and technology in one company. We are one of the leading ServiceNow partners and have over a decade of domain experience in each of the areas of the ServiceNow portfolio. For the past 2 years at Evergreen, we have been working very hard on one very specific thing: user-centric IT, focusing from the customer in, not IT out. Our inspirations for this have been Apple, Amazon, and Google, just to name a few of them. And we see both IT and the customer's experience evolving hand in hand, not separately, to drive both customer productivity and creativity, as well as IT's alignment with the business. So that's the end of my commercial, and now I'll turn it over to Jack.
Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
Can everybody see my slides?
You're good, Jack.
We're good? All right, thank you. Let me give you a little background about Argonne. Argonne is a multi-purpose research lab funded by the Department of Energy, and we're located in Argonne, Illinois. We have 6 user facilities, roughly 3,000 employees, 1,200 scientists and engineers, and 750 PhDs. A lot of the scientists and engineers now work remotely, and we never actually see them, but they're with associated universities and such. So they work remotely, but we still have to deliver good service to them. We have 17 research divisions. We collaborate with more than 600 companies, federal agencies, and hundreds of research institutes worldwide. The top part of the slide shows some of Argonne's core missions. So under energy security, we do research in energy storage, alternative energy, and efficiency in nuclear energy. We do biological environmental system studies, and we also provide national security assistance. At the bottom of the slide, this actually shows our core capabilities that support the lab mission. So here you'll find things like hard X-ray sciences, fundamental biology, chemistry, materials, and physics, materials and molecular engineering and discovery, applied sciences, engineering, and where I'm sitting, leadership computing. So what was our challenge? I was brought into Argonne in January of 2013, and my goal was to help the central IT structure align their processes better with the business, to help mature the existing ITIL processes, build out new processes, and actually put a service management platform in place. So Argonne had a tool, but they weren't really happy with the tool. The tool was more of a help desk type tool, and they wanted something that would help them across all of service management. So in a very short period of time, we selected ServiceNow as our platform, and we quickly put together a proposal to stand up basic ITIL processes and the tool by the end of the government fiscal year, which for the people that aren't aware of it is September of 2013, or September. So we got going, and immediately the facilities guys came to us and said, hey, we hear you have a new tool. We're building this new building for energy science. We've been told that we don't deliver services good. Can you guys help us out with improving the way that customers can request help inside the building? So we said, sure. When do you need it by? We're supposed to go live in September. They said, well, that's great. We really need to go live in June. So we did. We got them up. We got facilities running. We put everything for ITIL on the back burner. We got the facility stuff up and running in June. They were running in parallel. We got going again. Our timeline got skewed a little bit. We went live with our incident and request in November of 2013. Christmas break comes and goes, and the safety office shows up in my office, and the safety guy goes, hey, this tool you're using looks kind of cool. We heard from the facility guys. They like it. We get a lot of mail asking questions about safety, and we don't really have a good way to track it. Can you help us with tracking safety requests? So we said, sure, we can help you with that. So we started putting something together. Winter in the Chicagoland area can be challenging at times. Last year was extremely icy. So the safety office came in and said, can you build something really quick that'll let people report where they're seeing problems with ice on site, take a picture with their phone, have it routed to the facilities guys, have them send out a grounds crew, spread some salt, clean up the ice. And can you do that in a short period of time? We said, sure, had that running in a couple of weeks, and continued on our journey. In June, the photography people came to us and said, we're always getting yelled at because we don't always show up on time for when people need to have photographs taken. People always call us or they send us mail. Our boss doesn't have a really good view of what we're doing. Can you help us out? So we said, sure, no problem. We can help you out too. It's about this time in May, June of 2014, I went into the CIO and I said, you know, we're building this catalog out for all of IT, but I really think we should take a look at the mission support area that we're in and turn out a mission support catalog for facilities and the safety people. Give one place for everybody to go to make requests. He thought it was a good idea and asked me to present this with him to the COO, who oversees mission support. So we did a brief presentation to the COO. He said, I like it. Let's talk to the division heads for all of mission support, see what they think. Went in and did a presentation for them in June of 2014. They all liked it and said, this is great. Can you get us a roadmap built by the end of summer? So I went, sure. Came back, met with the service management team, and we realized that this is kind of outside the scope of experience that I've had. I've mainly stood up ITIL and IT service management, and nobody else on the team actually had any experience in this area. So I went to the COO and I said, we're going to need some help. We'd like to bring in a consulting firm to help us build out this roadmap to figure out where we need to go, how many years it's going to take, what's the logical steps to take. And I said, and what I'm really, really worried about is building a governance structure in place. Because I don't want to just throw things up in the catalog and then have somebody go in and ask for it, but not have an understanding of when it's going to be delivered, or if we have multiple organizations involved, that they actually work together to deliver the service to the customer. So he said, okay, who do you have in mind? So I said, well, I've been to Knowledge, I've been to ITSMF, and there's a lot of groundswell around this company called Evergreen, and they're supposed to be really good at building up a catalog. You know, I got this pamphlet for them. They can actually build out a roadmap. Can we talk to them, see if it's what we're looking for? So we got the green light. We took a look at Evergreen, we wrote a quick rec-up, we talked to them about what their philosophy is, and a lot of companies, they're not the only one, there's a lot of companies that will help come in and look at your processes, establish a baseline, identify key areas of improvement, help you with your roadmap. They have something called the Rapid Plan, Analyze, and Pilot offering, and my supervisor and I really liked this concept. Because what they do is they brought in the stakeholders that were part of this from the other areas of mission support. They're part of the process, and as we're going forward building the roadmap and interviewing people, they also built out a specific catalog item of our choice that we could continue to use, and that they could see how quickly it is to make use of ServiceNow and to get the tool up and to make it available to the customers. So we engaged, we engaged Evergreen in August of 2014 with the goal of having a presentation to senior management with a roadmap by the end of September of this year. So what this slide represents is what came out of that 6-week evaluation period. So from a consulting experience and working with Evergreen, we walked away with guidance on a service catalog, mission support roadmap, governance recommendations, what resources were needed, what roles were recommended, and all this would help us build a sustainable solution. They co-presented executive briefings and our findings to the directors of mission support, our CIO and COO. From a piloting standpoint, we developed a couple of specific workflows as well as a complex multi-team request and workflow solution for our event requests. So event requests at Argonne are really complicated. This is something we've been kind of struggling with before Evergreen came in. So there's a lot of scientists here. They're used to we have 2 conference centers. We have multiple rooms, so we can hold multiple multi-day events. A few attendees to hundreds of attendees from all over the world. People can be traveling and staying here. We may need food. We may need lodging. We may need security. We may need people to come in and record the sessions. We may need people to walk around with microphones. We may need somebody to come in from the IT perspective and make sure everybody gets connected to our network correctly. We may want printing, signs, shuttling people around the site. So you get it, because a lot of organizations have things like this. The current workflow that we have is really puts a lot of the burden on the requester or the secretary of the requester, depending on the importance of the scientist. And they have to actually call all the different teams and coordinate all the work together. So we got the service providers together and said, we want to make this a better experience for the people making the request and holding the conference. Everybody agreed it's something that we needed to work on as service people, and that was something that Evergreen helped us with. One of the other things they did was they helped guide us talking with the different customers and coming up with 4 reusable workflows that we can use, the ServiceNow development team at Argonne could use on our own to continue to build out catalog items. So some of the observations from the projects are taken from 4 perspectives: customer-focused service delivery processes and tools. So at a high level, there's terrific customer support at Argonne. We all want to deliver good science. We all want to help the scientific endeavors here, and we all want to work together to make that happen. The problem we have is a lot of our processes aren't connected together, and the supporting technologies are very siloed and independent on the different areas. A lot of work here is still done through email and phone calls and talking to people that you know. All of the divisions are working hard. We saw that, but they're not working very efficiently, so they're really reactive, and stuff isn't scheduled properly. And then if you look at it, and some of the other issues that we have is that to deliver a service, multiple departments have to be involved that are spread across different support organizations, so there's no direct interaction between the teams. And that's something that we needed to work on. So taking a look at customer focus, you'll see that what Evergreen gave us back is they took a look at the finding, and they also looked at the areas that make up the service. Because you can't deliver good service without the customers being happy, it easily to execute, and having some type of governance and accountability and reporting to let people know how well we're delivering the service. So this helped us all with our baselining and re-engineering and piloting the capabilities of what we're trying to do. So under customer focus, what you see is our interactions are still, like I said, mostly phone, email, walk-ups. It's a slow experience. Some people think it's fast because they were the first one to call, so their work gets done, but the second guy that calls is put in a queue and they'll have to wait. It's not a consistent delivery of service. And there's no demand data managed right now, so we really don't know when the requests come in. Are they consistently busy all week long? Do they have periods during the week or during the month or periods during the fiscal year that there's a big groundswell in work, but the rest of the time they're working at a different level? Again, if we have to go across multiple departments, they get frustrated because some people want it via email, some people have web forms, some people expect you to call. So the integrators were getting really, really frustrated with trying to ask for services. From a service delivery standpoint, the key challenges are a lack of demand management insight. So there are few, if any, prepackaged price standard offerings. We have a really good internet portal called Inside Argonne that tells you what's available, but it really didn't tell you how to get it, or who to talk to, or how to follow up. All it suggested was calling someone or sending email. This made it gave customer perceptions. There was no set expectation on when something would be delivered, so when you don't do that, the customer thinks they're going to get it right away. Sometimes you deliver it right away, sometimes you can't deliver it right away, so they would get frustrated if they didn't get the same experience every time. Some of our services we offered, you would see everything you could possibly get, so the customer wasn't really sure what they should ask for. In the case for wanting audio-visual support for a meeting, there was a listing of everything you could ask for: microphones, video displays, staff walking around carrying the microphones and helping answer questions, video recording of the meetings. All that was just listed out, and it was up to the end user to pick what it is they needed. And in some cases, they'd pick everything, but then they would pick a room that didn't support that, and then we get back to them and say, well, you asked for this, but we can't really do that in that room. And they get really, really frustrated. In the case of mail, something simple, somebody asking for an email list, what they were given was a website that listed every option, every technical option that you would get from the tool that we were using to provide mail lists. So we took a step back and said, okay, what are our most common requests? Can we bundle up some packages around this? Give me like the simple mail list request, somewhat more complicated mail list request, and like the gold package. And we started looking at all of our different services and say, hey, you know, this can apply across the board, whether it's facilities or HR or safety or IT. Let's come up with the concept of delivering packages to the customer and giving them the chance to be able to add things to it, but helping them guide them to the most common requests that people would have. And under processes, a lot of our processes were stovepipe processes. So they were set up by a department. You would get through that department, that's the way they worked. Then you'd have to know that you need to move to another department to continue the workflow. And that may go in a completely different way. So there was no real connection between organizations. And there was no oversight between the structures. There was no reporting across services. There may be reporting for one specific area, but there wasn't really any type of reporting across the whole service delivery. One of the things that I've experienced talking to people about service delivery in the different areas outside of IT is that the first thing I talk about is what are your SLAs? What are your service level agreements? What does the customer expect from you? How quickly do you deliver the services you have now? And I get, well, we're not really worried about that now. Can't we just put something up? And immediately as you put something up and people start to make requests, you also start to hear about, hey, I asked for this stuff, where is it? So then they come back and say, okay, that other thing you were talking about, that SLA thing that I wasn't sure about, you're right. I need you to help me, give me a report on how long it's taking me to deliver this. So that's something that Evergreen picked up on too, and so that we needed to really put together some type of management and governance across service delivery and mission support, and provide reporting to the customers to let them know where their request was at, but also to let management know how well we're delivering our service, or if services that we offer are actually being used, and are they being used efficiently. And then in the area of tools, we have some really great homegrown tools, but they're specific to the different silos. So you may have multiple ways of making requests, either web pages, wikis, people like blogs, people hand out little cards with phone numbers of people you can call for support. So there are multiple ways that our customers can make requests. And it again, gives an inconsistent feel on the delivery. It's hard for us to check when a person makes a report that there's a problem, where the breakdown in the workflow is. So we took a look at that with Evergreen and looked at ways that we could improve this. One of it is the request we got from the safety office, where they said, hey, we have people send questions to safety at AML.gov. And when we were talking to them about the workflow and how they handled those, if it was actually really a report where, like, a sidewalk may need to be repaired or a door wasn't working right, those weren't really handled by our safety office. Those were moved over to the facilities organization. That was done by a phone call or an email over to facilities. But then the safety office lost complete view into what was happening. And the facilities infrastructure at the time didn't really provide a customer view in the work that was being done. So the person that reported it to safety would go to the safety people and say, hey, you know, is anybody going to do anything about that sidewalk? And then the safety people would have to call the facilities people, try to find the right person and find out where that was, because it was in their type of tool, and the safety office didn't have a view into that tool. So in getting everybody together and saying, could we have an overarching tool that helped provide views to the customers and to the different teams that have to work together, everybody agreed that yes, this is something we really, really needed to do. So here's a quick view of some of the tools that came out of the audit. So in the upper left, you can see customer experience. So these are different ways people could make requests. So the third one down is called Zinc. So many years ago, Argonne took the initiative to say, you know, we got a lot of paper forms, let's take those paper forms and make them electronic forms. So they did that, and that's great. You can go on a website, if you type a couple of keywords or you remember the number of the form that you need to put in, you can actually fill out a form and it's going to generate work somewhere. And somebody's going to do something. And there's some workflow behind it, and you can check on that workflow. So that's not bad, but it actually didn't spawn between organizations, nor did you have a good way of going in to find out where the state of your request was, where your form was. If the form was assigned to you, there wasn't really good ways for you as a service provider to figure out where in your queue that should be placed and to do the work. We had a lot of websites where people had homegrown forms that would generate email messages or templates, and they would assign email messages to other teams, but the other teams weren't on board with working together with that organization. So we had trouble with those forms. We had the Inside Argonne Internet where you could go and look up requests, but usually that turned around was saying, call this person or send mail to this mail list. It wasn't really a place where you could go and see what services were offered and actually request that service. Scheduling resources for audio visual or potentially needs for catering. You were taken to a Microsoft Exchange calendar and you would make your request, but Exchange isn't really set up to actually handle workflows. So it would drop off once you actually put in the Exchange calendar request and people weren't sure where things were at. or if work was really being done to be delivered for the event that they had scheduled on a certain day. Our health organization has an excellent portal where you can go in and schedule medical appointments and items there, but there was no view into where you may start out asking for something or asking a question with the medical office, and it would actually need to wind up going back into the portal. So they were looking for a front-end view for that. Nemo is something that we wrote ourselves that was an early attempt at trying to help people manage their work and things that they needed to approve or tasks they had to do, but it didn't work across the board. In the middle just shows the different, we have multiple ways that you can put in your time and effort. We have multiple ways of trying to do cost recovery. Not all of our organizations are cost recovery. The organization I work for, the IT organization I work for, we are not cost recovery. Elements of facilities are cost recovery. Elements of our communication organization, if you're asking for printing for a conference, are cost recovery. If you're asking for someone to help you write an article for a news magazine, it's not cost recovery. So there's all kinds of different ways, and people don't know when it's going to cost you to ask for a service versus when a service is considered free from the end user. And on the right are all the different areas that the support organizations have to go into to gather data and try to find out information to help somebody with a request. So if you're a service provider, you may have to hit 6 different tools to figure out how to deliver a service that a customer requests. So that's something that we're trying to control by building our configuration management database. Sorry. So let's take a look at some of the recommendations that came out of the assessment with Evergreen. And I want to say that Evergreen worked directly with the team of people that we had on our end. And that wasn't just me, but it was actually representatives from the safety office and the health and environmental wellness area and the facilities department. So we all worked together and talked with Evergreen, and they shared their feedback. So we were aware before they presented to management the issues that they had uncovered, and they had made sure that they had buy-in from the support people on what they were going to talk about. And that was really, really key, because nobody walked into that meeting feeling that they were being blindsided or that they were being blamed for something, but that Evergreen, working with us, had come up with a set of recommendations to make mission support work more efficiently for the lab. And that was a really big plus for us, I think. So I think we're all in agreement that we're looking to pick one tool, and we've agreed that ServiceNow is going to become the platform for mission support requests. One of the things that everybody agreed across the board is we have too many tools, and we're going to look at ServiceNow to be our portal. And that was just something that Evergreen brought up to our management, that we had all agreed that we should use this one tool to help build out things, that it had good reporting capabilities, that it has the concept of a place for all end users to go to make requests. The big thing that they pushed on, though, and I like this, is that the service quality experience is always an end-to-end experience. So you can't just measure success and failure by the support team, but you have to reach out to the customer. Because if the customer doesn't like how you're presenting it to them, then you failed. Even if it makes us more efficient in the back end, if the customer finds it too hard to use, or if they're confused, or they don't have any insight, they're not going to play with it. They're not going to use it. They're not going to make requests to it. So it's key to make sure that you build something that provides a consistent experience to the customer. So this sounds probably very simple, but even on the websites where facilities would put up something where you would make a request, and the safety office would put up something where you'd make a request, or even in my organization where we put up something where you'd make a request, we referred to consistent fields in different ways. So the customer really wasn't sure what he should be putting in that field. So one of the first things we did with Evergreen was take those forms, look at them, and go through them and come up with a naming scheme that we were all happy with. Seems simple, but it makes it easier for the customer wherever they're going to make a request, that they know when you talk about who the requester is, everybody's talking about the same thing. Or if you're talking about a cost code, we call it the same thing. all the way across the board. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of tools we need to keep, and we need to integrate into ServiceNow and pull the information out, but there's a lot of tools that are redundant. And do we really need them, or should we consolidate that work into the ServiceNow area? And there were some recommendations from Evergreen on how to make that happen. And then how to build out user adoption, because they're used to just sending mail. Now we're telling them to go to a web page. That's harder than just sending mail. So you want to make sure that they get the fact that when they go to the web page and answer some of those questions, we can deliver things faster and more efficiently and more accurately to them. And that going to the web page is an enjoyable experience. And that is something that we worked on really hard with Evergreen. And this is key to my heart, and Don will tell you that I've said this a million times. We really need to put a governance team in place across all of mission support to understand the service management focus and to make sure that we are always delivering services in a consistent way to our customers, and that we talk to the different organizations that make up the service. So facilities may own a service, but they require IT to provide part of the support, or HR or safety, and we all work together. We don't stay in our little silos, and we work together to improve that service. So we really need to build that governance team out. And that we need process owners for the processes, and we need someone that's responsible, or in my case I call it one throat to choke, that we can go to say, hey, we need to look at this. So in a lot of areas we have multiple people delivering a service because they're work strapped, and it was quite clear that that's okay for the short term, but you have to have an owner. Somebody that owns that, somebody that wants to make it better, that owns the improvements. And Evergreen stressed that to management, and we got management buy-in on that area. So how are we going to do this? Well, after Evergreen talked about all of the recommendations and the areas that they thought we could improve, they came back with a 3-phase roadmap for us that could be executed over a 2 to 3 year period, depending on our funding and our dedication of resources, because they get that we're resource strapped. So phase 1 focuses mainly on building a stable solution, a foundation for governance and process and technology standpoints. So one of the things that the key areas here is to build that governance area and build out some of the life cycle and key services that we can offer and get them up there. And then put some base reporting around what we're doing, so we can show where we started at and then show continual improvement. Phase 2 builds around the foundation and drives development of new services aggressively, both in the number of services and divisions supported. And one of the things that we'd like to take advantage of is allowing the service providers the ability in their area to build their own catalog items, just following the governance and get it going. So that's something that they've asked for, and that's something that we'd like to deliver, and that's something that we find key in the first 2 phases. And then the third area is just cleaning up. We've got critical mass done and moving forward with service improvement. So the key takeaways from this are service catalogs begin with the customer. So when you build it, think of the customer. Don't think of your IT organization or your facilities organization. Build it from what the customer is looking for. And when you're transforming services, there are 3 areas that you always have to think of. The customer, the provider, and management are key. Rapid solution piloting is a secret weapon, and this is really important. So you don't want to take a year to build out something complex before anybody can see it. Do some quick wins. Get some simple things up there so people can see that there's progress happening in this area while you're working on the area that takes a long period of time. And then business process reengineering can be bottom-up and not top-down. And that's something that we saw even before we brought in Evergreen, is we saw sort of this grassroots development where people were saying, hey, this could make my life better. Can I be part of this thing? What you want to do then is grab everybody together and put some governance in place so it's handled efficiently across the board. And then using service components as CIs that can be reusable, so we don't have workflows that are just for facilities or for safety, but we've built things in place that can be used across all of mission support in our services, and potentially, if we expand our services out across the scientific areas, allowing them to make use of the building blocks that we put in place. So I know I've talked for a while. I appreciate all of your patience. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Benedict, who's actually going to provide a demo of what we built.
Great, thank you, Jack.
Yeah, Jack, thanks very much for all the detail. I really appreciate it.
So before I jump into the Argonne ServiceNow environment, I do have just a couple really quick slides I wanted to kind of cover just to outline some of the key kind of design elements that went into the solution. First of all, we did want to kind of create a new customer experience for interacting with the services. And so we did this through creating kind of a new customer portal on the ServiceNow CMS, which I'll show in a minute. And some of the guidance that went into this was that we did want it to blend in with other kind of common look and feel throughout the Argonne experience, and so the users moving from one side of Argonne to another could kind of seamlessly flow from here to there. Another kind of principle, we really wanted to make sure that the experience was simple, there wasn't a lot of clutter, it was easy to get in and out and kind of interact with that experience. I think some of the other kind of elements related to that is there were, as kind of Jack alluded to, a lot of these kind of processes have been built, facilities and security that have been built with kind of behind the scenes a lot of different kind of workflows, and even from a ServiceNow perspective, there were different tables, there was different complexity kind of behind the scenes. We really wanted to kind of mask and hide a lot of that, so from a customer experience, they just kind of go into my tickets or my list, and they don't realize that there is deep complexity kind of behind the scenes. The other kind of, I guess, principle on the portal is, as kind of Jack alluded to, is that this is a growing activity, and more of the actual request forms that are going to be moved to ServiceNow are going to continue to grow over time. So really wanted to make sure the experience could grow with that. So a lot of what you'll see is kind of promoting popular items, trending items, or new items that are kind of to be I guess, pushed to the forefront to kind of encourage, requesting or ordering things that are new and or commonly used within the portal. As mentioned, scientists at Argonne often have to host these multi-day events, at a lab, and for attendees around the globe, and hosting these conferences is a complex activity. And it kind of relied on, as Jack said, it kind of relies on the people to kind of pull those things together and orchestrate those. So, what we ultimately built, and I'll show this in a minute in terms of kind of the requesting and event planning activity, is a way to kind of bring that into one way to enter, one way to kind of just spawn off those various work activities, and provide kind of a single tracking across all the different departments that were involved in the event planning activities. The end result or some of the benefits, as kind of alluded to here, were that obviously it's an easier way to get in and request what you need. It certainly makes it a little easier for people that aren't familiar with the request planning or the event planning activities to know kind of what options are available to them. But I think some of the bigger things are just the ability to see kind of how things are progressing, make sure they are indeed getting the service they want, and be able to kind of jump in and help with any delays or roadblocks along the way. All right, so let me go to the portal here. So here's the home page. Obviously, you saw a screenshot of it a minute ago of the self-service portal we set up. And the landing here is a bit of a dashboard for the user as they see kind of counters of their kind of active requests, their active action items for them to work, as well as some of those things that are popular and commonly requested. The thing to know with this is the popular lists, as well as the kind of any of the data throughout this portal, are filtered based off of the user's rights and roles, and that's by design so that the users aren't being inundated with requests or things that aren't relevant to their role or their job function. Further, there's kind of a scrolling news section here, which this is a dev environment, so most of these are test articles, but obviously this is to help drive and promote key critical news and announcements and critical outages or other events that are worth noting to the user interacting with the site. One other thing I wanted to mention too is that this same page was built with a responsive framework, so tablets, iPhones, any of the mobile devices, smaller frame devices, it does render kind of in a customer-friendly experience. More and more of the solutions at Argonne are moving to kind of a mobile-friendly model, and in some cases a mobile-first design. So this was certainly, part of our design and our setup was to align with that kind of plan and that goal. I'll just kind of click into one of these items so you can see the details. So, the knowledge articles, obviously rendering the full details of knowledge information. The customers can, as those are familiar with ServiceNow, can provide feedback and or ratings, which can then help drive the popularity of those knowledge articles along with the views and so forth. Let's go to, report a problem. Kind of what you would expect here, right? So ability to report an issue or a problem. So I can say need help with my printer. Pretty simple experience, not asking them to fill out a whole lot of detail in order to get service for something that's not working as expected. After submission, I do get my ticket number that I can kind of reference in the future, right? I can also go and request other items kind of through the make a request area. And what I'm seeing here are the items that are most commonly ordered or the kind of promoted items per kind of category. I can always dig in and see the full list by going into a category, and I'll see all the items that are available to it along with any of the items that are available in any of the subcategories, as well as kind of see those things that are popular. My other option is I can always, if I kind of know what words make up an article or an item, I can do kind of a word search for that and quickly jump to, say, email distribution list request to get in and submit that particular kind of request. Also, I can go through and do a search kind of more across both knowledge and catalog items. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is the actual display has changed, and this is done by design. For it was felt that the kind of current inside Argonne kind of look and feel, should be honored for the search kind of related content. So I can kind of come in here and be able to search for ServiceNow related content, but also search for inside Argonne or the document center and so forth. And there's more of a move at Argonne to move these sites to kind of mirror the same overall experience. Let's go Browse Knowledge. So this page, the Browse Knowledge, obviously mirrors a bit of the Browse Catalog, same kind of experience as we go through, seeing items that are popular based off the category, being able to quickly search for those items. The other thing that we are doing through this site is we are kind of tracking history. So as the user's working around or looking at articles, we're tracking what they're viewing, and so they can easily come back and look at the documents and or the knowledge articles that they recently looked at or viewed. Let's go to, I think, one last page here. Let's go to My Requests. So in the request areas, this provides obviously visibility for the customer to see both their requests as well as things that they're on the watch list for, and be able to kind of track those statuses of those. And they kind of filter by request or incident. They can sort, they kind of look for certain ticket numbers or pieces of information. The other thing I wanted to call out on this page that I think is fairly unique in terms of kind of making it I guess a place to go to not just consume information, but also as a channel of getting input from the customer, is there's some actions that the customer can interact with, or they can interact with the records with some various actions here to kind of help move the workflow along. So, for example, obviously if there's items awaiting their approval, they can come out here and do an approve or deny on those items. Right, so I can approve a request. As I approve it, it hides from my view. But also there might be cases in the workflow where the fulfiller needs additional information from me as the customer in order to move that process along, so they can move it into a certain status and state that requires my input. And then it shows up out here as items awaiting my feedback, and I can come out here and provide my feedback, which then helps move that request along. In essence, moves it out of that state, notifies the fulfiller that an update's been performed by me, and kind of helps move that process along. And then lastly, as requests are completed or as incidents are completed, I, as the consumer, can validate whether or not this particular item has been completed to my satisfaction. So if I say, no, I'm not satisfied, then I have to provide some insight as to why I'm not satisfied, which then goes back to fulfiller as to here's what the customer was expecting. Or if I say, yes, I am satisfied, then my record gets closed and removed from my action item list. All right, so that kind of covers what I wanted to show as far as the portal goes. Let me go into kind of our event planning request. I'll show you how that was structured. A lot of this is going to mirror kind of what Jack had mentioned as far as their, I guess, kind of options for the event. So in essence, we're using order guides in ServiceNow. So those familiar with ServiceNow probably know what an order guide is. But I can come in here and notice a lot of the information kind of defaults for who I am in my profile. Obviously, I can kind of change if I want my cost center to be charged to a different cost center, if this is for a different department or different individual. I can update and change that information, but chances are this information at the top is going to kind of stay the same. So I could have, say, networking lunch, and I want to plan this for, say, tomorrow. Let's just say from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And based off the number of people, then my preferred location may be suggested to me, or maybe I may be encouraged to pick a different location based off of the timing of my event or the number of people in my event. But I'm going to pick this location. I can kind of change who I want the cost code to go for the event, and then I kind of explain my various details of what I need. Notice this kind of mirrors a lot of what Jack alluded to. So there's various options that were, to date, a lot of the users have to go out and know that there's a different group that handles audio visual or a different group that handles directional signage, and they have to know kind of who to contact, what forms to fill out for these various kind of features and functions of the event. But we've kind of consolidated all that into one kind of request form that will ultimately then drive further questions based off of each of these different kind of choices and selections. So I'll choose kind of, we need signs for our event. We're going to have some food catered. We'll get some, I won't do photos, but we'll do prints. Maybe we need some tech support for helping set up the room. And maybe we need some tech support for helping those individuals that will be attending our event. So as I progress, what you'll find now is that I can always go back and change my details, but most of my main information I'm now kind of done with and worked with. But now each of the individual items that I selected has additional kind of specific questions in regards to what do I need for the details around my signs. Fill that out for food. The campus for Argonne has its own hotel, has its own kind of cafeteria, so I can get food from the cafeteria, I can get food from the guest house or the hotel, or I can also provide it from an outside source. This will still drive activities in the workflow, even if I choose outside source, because we may need tables set up for the actual food to be consumed. But I can choose cafeteria, and this is a case here where you're seeing there's an option still to go out and fill out the form that's out in Zinc, which is another request management tool. So this is kind of a placeholder of something that ultimately will be moved into ServiceNow. So instead of filling out the form in Zinc, we'll come out and fill the form directly in here. But for now, this is kind of a way to step forward into this particular progress. Same for printing. Maybe I want some name badges, some table tents, room setup. Maybe I want, I have no preference on the configuration. Maybe I do want to open up the walls and make it a little bigger. Notice if I choose that, I get additional costs added into the equation because there is labor associated with moving those walls. And the same thing for tech support. There is labor associated with tech support at an agreed to hourly rate. So maybe I just want it for an hour for $75 an hour. And so this is my kind of, confirm that this is the order I want and everything looks hunky-dory and ready to go. So now I can submit my order. And I've got a request number for my various requests. And I'll see the individual line items to be able to watch the details of these items and be able to track the progress. Behind the scenes, I'll just quickly show you kind of the overall workflow. request. There is a level of approval that happens up front to ensure that all information is properly captured, and based off of that approval, then the individual items that I've selected as part of my event will spawn off its own separate kind of workflow. I'll just kind of show you one of these. Let me approve this really quick. And we'll go into, say, print, for example. So under print, this has its own workflow to fulfill the print. And so obviously the customer gets acknowledged throughout the process. They can come out to the portal to check the status. But all of this work used to be done outside of systems, done mostly through email, phone calls, et cetera, and now is all chained together in one kind of orchestrated manner and orchestrated fashion. So hopefully that was helpful. That's what I hope to show today in terms of kind of what we did from both an event planning activity as well as a kind of new customer experience.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, I think we're at the point where I'm going to turn it back over to Don, or are we ready for questions? Did you have anything?
Well, we're ready for questions.
All right, great. Okay, so we did have a couple of questions come in, and the first one is for Jack. Jack, what did you do to get customer input early and often without getting bogged down with several different ideas of how I would like to see it?
That's a good question. So at Argonne, we're actually really lucky. We have a end user experience team. So they already kind of guide the lab in the way things should look and feel, and they also drove a lot of the way Evergreen built our service desk interface. So when we work with the customer, we had the end user experience person in the room too. So we more concentrated on what it is that you need to ask for in the workflows, and then we guided them through the way it should look. And they really didn't give us a hard time about that, because part of the thing that Evergreen helped deliver on is they could build the form fast, and we could do some testing with them, and then we could make some adjustments. So they didn't really worry so much about the look and feel, because they were immediately kicking the tires and playing with their form.
Right, that's good. Thank you, Jack. The other thing that helped, I just add, was the word pilot helps a lot as opposed to production, because people knew pilots could change, and it was just a way of experimenting. So it let the kind of lowered the barriers to change resistance a little bit. Don't you agree, Jack, or not?
No, I agree completely. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Jeff, the next question's for you. And Shelby asked, what happens when an individual states that they are not satisfied?
So when they're not satisfied, then it basically captures the information that they're prompted to fill in about their non-satisfaction, or that the request or incident has not been fulfilled completely. So it'll capture that information. It will actually move the state of the either incident or request back into a working state, and send a notification to the fulfiller as to here's what the customer responded with as far as their lack of satisfaction information, and that their particular request is no longer marked as complete.
Right, and I should say on the back end, process-wise, our service desk has a daily meeting, and one of the things they look at is tickets that have been reopened and who they've been assigned to, because somebody hasn't been satisfied. So they keep an eye on that too.
Okay, great, thank you. Jeff, I've got another question for you. How do you take the next step and assign the actual setup of a room to a porter?
Sorry, can you say it one more time? Set a room to?
Yeah, take the next step and assign the actual setup of a room to a porter. So how do you assign it to the person actually doing the setup?
I mean, most of that, so there are, and Jack, maybe you can help me with this one to some degree, but I mean, all of those, depending on the actual fulfiller of the, obviously the event planning activity has different people performing different activities. For each of those, the majority of them generate tasks to the individual work teams, and those then tasks get assigned to individual members of their team. So if facilities has a task to, remove the walls from an event, they have a task to remove the walls. and they would assign it to one person, within the facilities group that would then, remove the walls, update the task, and close it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of the mode of operation right now. There are still some cases where I think we're using kind of the existing channels of support, generating an email to a group, and then there's maybe like a liaison to mark the status that it's been completed or not once they're done.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay, great. I believe this question's for Jack. It comes in from Mike. What was your overall decision-making governance model for making and approving recommendations related to, for example, the common data model or request form templates?
That's a good question. So understand that we brought in Evergreen to help us build out the governance model because everybody was doing sort of their own type of thing. So during that 6-week pilot, the governance team was driven by myself from the Service Management Office and from Evergreen, working with the service providers to understand what it is they're doing. So we had a mini review of what we were trying to do, and then in the report from Evergreen, they recommended what the governance structure should look at. So I'm going to kick that over to Don because he was key in helping develop that out.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. It is a good question because it's a fundamental process and communication issue. And since these were non-IT people, we had a communications challenge. Every term, every label that we're used to using that's an idle parlance or an IT type term had to be made in simple phrases, right, or in prima facie kind of statements. And that actually helped us to create a common language to communicate with, right? And that request, the point about the data model was not as critical as the request form templates and the upfront management of that, right, and getting the common language and model going. And so the other thing that helped make it happen was the speed of the iteration, right? As we as a team, our team and Jack's team, we had the first version of the pilot for conference room management on the table 8 days after the start of the project. And of course it was pretty rough, but that was the place to start, and then we iterated it 3 or 4 more times during the project from an agile standpoint, and it allowed people to get that going and to understand the terms and the use of the terms, right? So it kind of flew with the agile process as we developed it. And the other thing that was valuable about it again was the fact that I came back to the term pilot 100 times because it made people relax, and they said, okay, it's not final, and we can change it, right? They saw how fast things could change. So it was almost like the governance evolved from that standpoint, as did the parts of it that go along with it. And with classic client server kinds of activities, you have to nail that down so hard up front because you might start a 3 or 4 month project, could be $150,000, and if that outcome is wrong, that's a huge expensive mistake. If we did something wrong, if it wasn't on target, we were looking at it 12 hours later.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'm looking back here. It looks like we've got a follow-up question from Debbie for you, Jeff. Back to the room setup question. Does the system assign it to the porter, or is it a separate outside Evergreen workflow?
Perhaps even how are they notified? Maybe Debbie's looking for how they get notified to go and take action.
So certainly the generation of any kind of tasks to a group has notifications that are triggered from that. Emails is the mechanism that's currently in place. Right now, everything's being assigned to teams, not individuals. So how those teams manage their actual work and assignment to an individual is kind of under the controls of how those teams want to operate. But I believe most of them kind of work in the same model of monitoring a queue of requests and then assigning them to the appropriate individual based off of skills and availability and expertise.
Correct. That's something at Argonne that we wanted out of the tool, was to let the individual group managers manage the work for their team. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, I believe that is the end of our questions. Just a reminder to everyone, you will receive an email from me no later than tomorrow that will have a link to download the slide deck as well as a recording of today's webinar. So thank you once again for joining us. You will also, as registrants for this event, receive an advanced email to sign up for our next event, which I believe is on December 16th. So keep an eye out for that as well. And thank you once again for joining us. Goodbye.